In Lesson 312A, we are going to extend our knowledge of decimals to the thousandths place. This is one of those Minnesota Essential lessons that will not be found in your math journal. Instead, you will be using the sheet in the very back of your white Unit 3 packet in Lesson 312A. But let's go ahead and begin with our whiteboard and doing a little bit of a warm-up. So on your whiteboard, I would like you to draw parallel lines. So look at number 1. Next to number 1, you don't have to write the word, but go ahead and draw parallel lines. Number 2, perpendicular lines. Number 3, an acute angle. Number 4, intersecting lines. And number 5, an obtuse angle. Go ahead and take a moment, pause the video, and draw these 5 things. So for number 1, parallel lines, if you look at the 2 L's in parallel, it might help you remember that they are lines that will never cross. Think of railroad tracks. Railroad tracks would never cross over each other. These are parallel lines. Next, perpendicular. Perpendicular are lines that cross each other to form a 90-degree angle. And you often see this little square in the corner to indicate it's a right angle. Number 3, an acute angle is an angle that is less than 90 degrees. Intersecting lines are just lines that cross each other. They could form acute angles, they could form obtuse angles, but intersecting lines cross over each other. And an obtuse angle is an angle that is more than 90 degrees. All right, we're going to go ahead and go into our packets. This is just a copy of it, so I don't have a great copy of it on the video, but you're going to look for Lesson 312A, and it should say thousands. It's very near the back, and you might also find MM1, Math Master 1, at the bottom. So we're going to just be working in this packet for this lesson. We've talked so far about the place right after the decimal point called the tenths place. We said those are longs when we use our base 10 blocks. The next place after that is the hundredths place. We represented that with a cube. The new place that we are talking about was we are extending it to the thousandths place. Thousandths place. So let's begin with number 1. It says, write the shaded part of the grid as a fraction, a decimal, and in words. So, first thing I'm going to do is look to see how many equal sections there are in number 1. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. The bottom number of a fraction always tells me how many parts there are, how many equal sections. And 1 out of 10 is shaded. So the fraction would be 1/10. As a decimal, we would write it like this. And in words, we would write 1/10. Go ahead and fill this out on MM1, Lesson 312A, on the thousandths page. So that's what we talked about first. Then we moved to the hundredths place. The hundredths place means there are 100 little squares to cover this whole section. So our denominator would be 100, and 1 out of 100 is shaded. As a decimal, there are 0 longs, but there is 1 cube, 1/100th. And we would write it like this, 1/100ths. Add that TH to the end. Moving on to now thousandths. It says shade the smallest rectangle in the grid. What fraction of the grid did you shade? Now this is going to be really hard, but just shade in one of those little boxes. If you're wondering how many tiny little boxes, well, in each one of these, there is, in each one of those, let me shade in one again. There's 10. So 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100. There's 100 across the top, and then there are 10 rows of that. So 100 times 10, 1 times 1 is 100, or excuse me, 1 times 1 is 1, with 1, 2, 3 zeros behind it. I would have 1,000 little boxes if I counted every single one of them. And to just shade one of them, it would be 1,000, 1 over 1,000. And the way I know is there's 10 squares in each box. Ten boxes across the top. So that would be 10 times 10 equals 100. And then there are 10 rows of that. So 100 times 10 equals 1,000. They'd be really hard to count, near impossible for me. Now we're going to move to the next page, and you're going to have to turn your packet so it is sideways. And I'm going to put in some numbers, and we're going to just practice reading them. So I'm going to just put, would you go ahead and fill this in? Notice there is a decimal point there. It's a little bit hard to see. We're going to go ahead and read that number. And the way we would read it is we would say 8 and. So when you see that decimal point, you say the word and. 8 and then you just read this number as a 3-digit number. And then you say the place where it ends. So I would say this 8 and 542 thousandths. So I just read this number as 542 and then read the place value. Let's try another one. Probably the best color. All right, let's try this one. So I would read this number as 17 and, I'll read this 3-digit number, 17 and 891 thousandths. All right, let's try another number. We'll continue to go out, make this a larger number each time. Remember, we say the word and instead of point when we read that. So go ahead and write that number that's in green. Right now, it would be 863 and 467 thousandths. Wherever the number ends, that's what we read. Let's try one more. Here we have a comma, here we have a decimal point. We would read this number as 4,681 and 84 thousandths. Notice I didn't say 084. I just read it as 84. That's all that's there. And then say the place value where it ended. All right, let's move to the next page in your packet. So you'll turn the page to M3. I am going to go ahead and put a couple of numbers down again, just like we previously did. And then we're going to take it one step further and write each of the numerals in expanded form. So let's start with just putting 0 in the ones place and then 793 thousandths. So I would just read this number as 793 thousandths. And down below, I'm going to then go ahead and write that in expanded form. Expanded form would be 7/10 plus the 100th place, which is 9/100 plus, we're just isolating the place value. So adding 7/10 plus 9/100 plus 3/1000, that would then give me 793 thousandths. Let's try another one. Go ahead and write the number that's in green. That number would be read 5 and 645 thousandths. Now in number 2, we're going to write that in expanded form. So we would say the whole number 5 plus 6/10 plus 4/100 plus 5/1000. And together that would give me 5 and 645 thousandths. All right, let's try another one. Go ahead and write what is in red. We would read it 17 and 307 thousandths. So in expanded form, we would write 10 plus 7. Remember, separate each number in its place value. Plus 3/10 plus, we don't have anything in the hundreds, so we can skip that. And then say 7 thousandths. So again, that would be 17 and 307 thousandths. Let's go ahead and write what's in the dark blue. We would actually just read this as 84 thousandths. So in expanded form, we would go ahead and just write the 800ths plus the 4 thousandths to give us 84 thousandths. So it's an expanded form, and just listening to yourself read those numbers. Moving on to the next page. It says color part of each grid to show the given decimals. Write the decimal as an equivalent fraction in words and in expanded form. So this one is 245. Remember, each one of these is 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100. Each row is 100. So let me do another row. That would bring me to 200. And 10, 20, 30, 40, 41, 42, 43, 44, 45. As a fraction, I have 245 out of the 1,000 that I would need to cover that. In words, it would be 245 thousandths. Don't forget that TH at the end. And in expanded form, we would say that is 2/10 plus 4/100 plus 5/1000ths. Moving on to number 2. Number 2 says to shade in 806 thousandths. So go ahead and shade. We know each one of these is 100. So there's 100. From here to here would be 200. If you have a marker, it might go quicker. 300. 400. 500. 600. 700. We're almost there. 800. 800. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. As a fraction, it would be 806 out of the 1,000 that I need to cover that. In words, I would say 806 thousandths. And in expanded form, I would say 8/10 plus 6 thousandths. Do not worry about the last 2 sheets in this packet. We're going to end this lesson 312A here. Don't worry about the rest of that packet for this lesson.